and now I do therapy. So to get them going, I'll share you the same story that I shared with them. Is that I was sitting down with a client, and he looked at me and he goes, "You got a dress shirt on?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "But you're wearing high-top Converse shoes." I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I can't tell if you're a shithead or a professional." So I leaned in real close and I said, "Do you want me to take the shirt off?" So there's a little bit about me in the beginning of this, but I'm going to talk a bit after the call, which was largely came about because in my experience, so I'm from the volunteer sector and rural, so there was nothing. So we went to a call and there was literally nothing, including the fact that we didn't see each other for long periods of time. So something could have happened, something could have been bothering somebody, and we wouldn't actually know because we wouldn't see them. They just would stop showing up. Right? So, and I'm going to share a little bit of that, but After the Call is a free online resource. You go online and download anything, take it, make it your own, use it, email me if you need something, and I will try to find out what it is. As somebody in the mental health field now, as probably most of you can attest, we're underfunded and overextended, so just more and more fees coming in, it becomes more and more costly to just get the help that we need. So for me, this really is my passion, keeping things as cheap as possible and free. My mission statement, I clearly say that I'm hoping that websites like mine are no longer needed soon. So I'm probably the only person out there trying to put themselves up in a job. So who am I? So I'm Nick. And one of the things that really kind of shook me is when I went into this field, you know, maybe you've heard this, and I think it was said earlier that, you know, we chose to go into this field. And one of the things that really rocked me is I said, well, I chose to go into this field, but I didn't choose the calls I get called out to go on to. I didn't choose to see those things. And largely, when I got into the field, I wasn't told about them either. Right? We're not told about that. You Google first responder, you Google fire, you Google police, what do you find? You know, someone carrying 2 axes and kicking in a door. Right? You only need one, and if you got a foot, you don't need any. Right? So. But we have that heroic image. And so one of the things that I really work for and was really passionate about is changing the culture, right? Some small thing, right? We talked about culture earlier, but trying to change the culture. And what that means is giving correct, real information based on my experience in the field. So I sit on this really cool precipice where I have both the experience in the field and now the research and clinical aspect behind it that I can, you know, see folks and help them out. So we all have stories to share. And I'm not going to get into any of mine in the nitty-gritty, but I just, you know, one of the things that I think is important for maybe clinicians, if you're in here and you don't really, you know, maybe have a partner in the field, or maybe you don't and you're here trying to help out, is one of the things that this field does is change the way you look at things. And not always for the best. For instance, everybody here is probably, you know, feels safe in their home, maybe. Maybe not, but most people find that's their home base, right? You play that game when you're young, right? I have home base, I'm free, you can't touch me, right? Until I get off home base, right? But for me, that home doesn't really carry that same safe connotations anymore because some of the most horrific things that I've ever seen was in a home, right? So home, where we try to keep that safety in, we try to keep that, you know, the dangers out. For me, sometimes, and for many of the first responders in here, we go in and out of that all of the time. And we're welcomed into that. Another thing that I'll never look at the same as a train, and that was the first incident that I really noticed that I, you know, maybe signed up for too much. And why the hell am I having nightmares? Why can't I sleep? Why am I angry? And don't get me wrong, I'm not diagnosed with any disorder, but this is a normal reaction that I had no clue what was going on and felt like I was completely crazy, right? And as I was writing this, actually, I got a note, I got a phone call, and it was somebody, you know, in hysterics calling me, because one of the other things that I'll talk about is I do some CISM work, and she said, am I normal, right? And I think I was telling Dr. John, I come to things like this, and I'm surrounding myself with people who actually care, and I feel like the work's done, there's nothing left to do, right? We talk about this, we all get it in this room, and I'm like, what are we even here for? Like, obviously, there's no problem, we're all on the same page, and then I get a phone call like that. And I realized that outside of these walls is where the work begins, and in here we're just kind of rallying together to make sure that we are on the same page and we send that same message out. So there is still work to be done, right? I shouldn't get phone calls from people asking if they're normal, right? Asking if this is normal to experience, because that shakes me to my core. So a little bit of my clinical side, I've done everything from crisis to child protection. I now work, as I say, it pays my mortgage and addictions. I did my clinical work in the hospital setting, and somebody else once told me you seem to be prone to trauma-laden jobs, and that might be true. So what does AfterTheCall do? One of the other things I thought was funny when I was writing this up is I always talk about we on my website, and up until about maybe 2 months there was only me. So maybe I was like rallying invisible friends, and that might be telling you more about me than... Anyways, we'll move on. One of the things that we want to do is change the mental wellness outlook. Too often we hear about mental illness, right? And mental wellness is on a continuum, right? You could be walking down the street and your life still kind of sucks, but you don't have any of those, you say things like, I should be thankful because of, right? Mental wellness is on a continuum, and you can be doing well, or you can be doing okay, or you can be doing not well. And so one of my goals is to help first responders in the cultural view of don't be just seeking help when things are really taking a dive, because then sometimes it's really hard to come back. There's more work to be done. Let's catch it before you're there. Right? My work with first responders, and maybe those in the room can tell me if I'm right or wrong with this, I do a small private practice for first responders, and I say, I haven't met one that's not an analytic. They want to figure it out, right? So just tell me what to do. Tell me these 3 things that I've got to do to help me fix this, right? And I said, well, one of them is to use that thing between your head and your body, right? That neck. Connect the 2. So one of the works I do is bring in that terrifying word called emotions. I know it's scary, just chill out, right? Feel them. Get in that body state and recognize that it's okay to feel those. And once you recognize that they're not going to kill you, because believe me, it can feel like that, then you're able to process these things a lot better, right? Increasing first responder knowledge of the impact of the role. I do a lot of writing, and one of the things that I read the other day was, all of this PTSD talk is really hurting our recruitment. Interesting. You give them the truth, and people maybe aren't so ready to sign up for it, right? That seems straightforward to me, but it seems surprising to those that are trying to retain personnel. But that's because we're not giving the other aspect of it, which is the growth part, right? There's a growing body of research that we hear very little about called post-traumatic growth. We heard a little bit about it today. Right? So one of the things I'd like to do, my dream, and when I go on to what we're going to do, is to create a culture when you join into a first responder role, we actually work at making you better as a person, right? Because we're going to throw you into situations that are hellish. We're going to throw you into things that you can't unsee, right? The difference between a scar and a scab. And what would be really great is to be able to walk out of that service stronger, more resilient, right? The other aspect that we have is we talk about resiliency, and we are really resilient. For years, not saying it wasn't there, but we weren't hearing about it. Why? Because we were relying on unhealthy coping mechanisms to get through it. But we still did the job. We still showed up, right? And that's resilience in a way, is it not? To be able to deal with all of that unhealthily and still show up. So let's just change the way we deal with it and use that resiliency. It's already built into us. It's already built into this field. Another thing that I'm doing that AfterTheCall tries to do is to identify the culture and the cultural trends towards isolation, towards using substance use, as we'll talk about it a little later, as coping mechanisms, because when you're in, and when you're out, you feel like you're out. And that can be a hard thing. It's crossing the walls, right? When you're on the inside, they'll protect you and corral around you. But from the folks that I talk to, once you admit, right, and that's the hard thing, once you admit to you're struggling, then you become the other, as we heard earlier. And becoming the other while inside, right? Do I lose these people who I know have my back, say if I go into a burning building, but don't have my back when I say I'm struggling? That's a hard place to be. You're choosing between leaving and getting better. And that's largely the implicit cultural aspects that we are having to deal with in the field. I might be rambling. Give me a high five or something. So one of the works I've been doing, and it's great, and I love it, has been consulting with a lot of fire departments. The other thing that I find really odd is I will speak to any first responders, but it seems to only be fire calling me. I don't know if that's I don't usually see all the services together unless at a call or unless we're fighting about something. So one of the things I've been doing is consulting with fire departments, and it's so interesting. I had someone ask me this question the other day, and I'm not making fun of them, and they're not here, so they won't know anyways, but you know, they asked me what the difference between depression and PTSD was. And for me, that's so obvious, and I know that's because I'm mired in this, but it's like we talk so much about it, and there's so much media out there, but when it comes down to it, we're still confused, aren't we, about what this all is, because we're still holding a stigma. And one of the things that I really don't want to see is people using the I have PTSD like the I have ADHD, right? My desk is clean, therefore I have, you know, obsessive compulsive disorder, I have OCD, right? That's just my OCD because my car is so clean. That I don't want to do, because people with this disorder are really living a true hell, and in order for them to get the respect that they deserve, we need to make sure that when we're using this, we're using it with respect. And so one of the things that I really try hard to is correct what it actually is, right? Just because you're experiencing some nightmares doesn't mean that you have PTSD. Actually, as we saw, if it's within a certain time limit, that means you're normal and you're experiencing a normal stress reaction, right? So it's kind of correcting some of that the media, though they're very helpful in this regard, have also kind of hurt us in a lot of ways too. The other thing that we do, as I said, we just switched from me to we, is because we just started a critical incident team. So it's a peer-to-peer, peer-driven team. So everybody on the team has been in the services, excepting one other mental health professional, and we're looking to bring one more on. So it's all peer-driven, so everybody's kind of walk the walk and walk the talk, and nothing has been more surprising to me than the amount of calls we get. I got one today. And we're not a big area, right? Like I'm talking cow country that way, right? So it's surprising how many people are really picking up and using, and it's just been a great experience for me as well. The other thing that I really look at is the family. I wrote an article that got a lot of feedback and a lot of sharing, which I was super surprised about, called "The Family Are the Silent Victims," because we don't talk about them. We're talking about the individuals, and for obvious reasons, but we're not talking about the family and the impact it has on them, right? We're not talking about when we leave a pager at home so they can hear the call, and when you show up get berated, because why would you do that to me, right? And so one of the other things I do when I do talks is, you know, I kind of coerce them into bringing their family members, and they don't want to, right? Because then the family members start to hear some of the stuff we go through that makes them afraid. But isn't it more honest to give them that outlook so that you can have a true conversation? Because I have seen this role ruin relationships. So where are we going? Perfect. Where are we going? As we talked earlier about moving forward, where are we going? Well, I've told you all the things that I'm trying to do. Where we are going is I'd like to get to that point. So I've had the opportunity to consult with some larger organizations. I'm now starting to branch out. I'm getting community professionals to come and speak with me, try to get me to help them understand the culture. And so where we're going is looking at trying to get everybody on the same page so they have a true understanding of this role, so they can help us. Because if we're so taxed in this mental health profession anyways, we want to make sure that when you finally get through the door a year later, or from November until now, right, that it's going to be an informed approach to help you out, because not every trauma, as we saw in the sperm earlier, gets through, right? And so some professionals get stuck on treating every single one, but we don't need that. We need to peel back the onion and to look at the layers and to find out which ones exactly that we need to do. One last thing I think I want to talk about just to end is, you know, I get infuriated because I still hear about it now, is that if you can't take it, then cut out. Where we are going, where AfterTheCall is going, I hope, as we're small grassroots, right? But what my hope is that mental illness never takes somebody away from the career again. My hope is that through things like this, through partnerships, and through the great work of the people in here, that you join this field and you walk out of this field on your own volition. That's giving you power back, isn't it? And that's my dream, is that you can walk into this field and you can walk out on your own. One thing that really changed me is when I did a small department, they had, this is probably the first person that's come out in the county, and more are now, but had PTSD, and he goes, one of the things that just shook me is like, I don't know if I'll ever walk through these doors again, and that killed me a bit inside because that shouldn't be the case, right? So that's where we are. That's where we're going. I know I rambled on a bit. I had lots to talk about, but my nerves got the best of me. But that's where we are. Everything online's free. My email's on there. Please get a hold of me if you want anything, any conversations, any talk. And if I don't know, I'll find somebody who does know. So I think we'll leave it there. Thanks.